Yeah, I'm just wondering, should I have showed up in my hoodie then if the video was going to be used?
See, if we were addressing neurodiversity in the corporate sector,
yeah,
then I would, probably not have a hoodie on myself. I'd maybe just have a
yeah,
t-shirt on. But when we're talking about neurodiversity in a sporting arena,
yeah,
then I think
that's what people wear.
my opinion
Yeah.
would look a bit bloody. People as viewers or the people that are going to consume this are not going to relate to it.
An important point, isn't it? Because that's what the people who we're talking to would wear. And I guess we're modeling, wear what you're comfortable in, what suits the task, Yeah.
Yeah, it's
great point.
I do. I think like, when I've in previous stuff I've done, when I've been into, solicitors and stuff.
Yeah.
In my younger days, I would have gone in a suit and tie. I don't even own a suit now or anything like that. I got rid of it. And now, if I were going into a solicitor's, I would still wear a pair of jeans, black jeans, pair of trainers, and a top. I wouldn't.
But it is an important point, though. It's about being comfortable, and I guess what we're going to be talking about is, these adaptations and helping people feel comfortable and be how they need to be to show up as like the best version of them. So it's linked to that, isn't it? So
I think I don't know. I don't give a shit what people think, Fleur. Seriously, and I don't mean that in a bit more of this. I don't mean that in a arrogant, belligerent, I'm better than everyone way.
No, it's just a good way to be.
Don't get you anywhere, does it? It doesn't get you anywhere. However, what we're talking about, what worrying what people think about you, as you know, is a mass. Not because you experience it, but I mean in your knowledge of what the topic. It's huge,
but it's a big thing, and it's one of the things I was going to talk about, because externally people might not be aware of everything that's going on inside and all of that, and it must be exhausting.
Well, my wife she's ADHD. She's been diagnosed with ADHD, and as you'll know, generally if a kid's got it, one of parents have got it.
It comes from somewhere,
and it must be exhausting to be in flight mode constantly. You look at you watch these I watch these like documentaries on TV, animal things. Yeah. And you get, prey and predators.
Yeah. That's what it's like.
Being a prey animal must be exhausting, because you can never be relaxed, can you? Because you're constantly either looking for someone to eat you or someone to eat your kids. And I sort of akin that to neurodiversity, that sort of in flight mode all the time, where I'm sort of in fight mode. Not that I'm aggressive, I've never had a fight, but I'm no bollocks, I'll don't give a shit, I'll go forward. And it just gives you so much freedom. And I know for ND people it's not a choice, is it? It's not, and it must be exhausting, because I know my missus, she is, and she all the time, and I just said to her, I said, no, just try not, for once when we go out, just try not to give a shit. And even if it's not giving a shit about one thing, which is what you're wearing on your feet, or how your hair looks, or who's going to be there, just try and not give it. I'm not saying it's easy, it's hard. It is. It's hard when you're not living with ND, isn't it? But so when we're talking about what we're talking about, what's your experience in this like fight or flight mode?
So as in personal experience or working with young people, individuals, or both? So I mean, I find personally, when I'm in that mode, I can't relax. And I guess, we talk about flow state and being in the moment, when I'm playing on the pitch. If I'm stressing about it and thinking, what are my teammates, thinking about that thing I've just done, or how I played last week, I can't get in that flow state and just relax and be in the moment, which is, I think, when people perform best, not just in a sports setting, but in any setting. If your mind's busy with all of that, you just can't. And I work with young people. I've been working with one recently who is constantly thinking all this stuff. And for them, they've had a period, I mean, it was, you know, end of the season, and they've been out naturally for a period, and now going back, all that stuff's coming back, those anxieties, the, you know, worries about what people think, worried about the fact that they're not as fit as they were because they were previously training. All of this stuff comes up, and then you can't be in that moment and the best version of you, you know, on the pitch, on the field.
Will a lot of, you know, sort of young academy players, before pre-season kicked off, so in that like close season state, I presume that will have been like a time of quite high anxiety as well, because the sort of worrying about what's coming and worrying about all those things. People are going to be fitter than me, they're going to be more prepared. Is this like a typical thing that would happen? Yeah,
and there's key points like that come up throughout the year, and obviously we've also got things like you know, when there's talk of people signing for a new club, or going elsewhere, or contracts ending, you know, all of this stuff comes up. And another one as well, obviously, is if people are out for whatever reason, whether that's injury or something's happened in the family and they've had to take some time out. All of these, I guess they're transitions, aren't they? They're disruptions, bring up these kind of, I guess, thoughts, anxieties, worries, which are probably always there to a degree in the background. If you've, especially for ADHD, if you've got a mind that is sort of restless, and I call it, you know, an overactive mind, a restless mind that is almost like looking for problems and searching, which would have been great, you know, if we think from an evolutionary perspective, back in the days when we were hunter-gatherers, and it was really helpful to have a brain that was on the lookout for you know, anything that might be a threat. That was great. But I guess in modern life, it's not as helpful if your brain is naturally searching for these negatives and these potential threats.
So like going back then to sort of when you said when you've been playing, and your brain is like thinking about, you know, is still in like a flight mode, where when I played, for me, as soon as I got onto that pitch, all my worries disappeared for literally 90 minutes.
It's a great place when you get and I do experience that. But I guess one of the things that I experience, and some other people might be able to relate to this, I'm always running late, no matter how hard I try. And I do try really hard to be organised, to plan ahead, you know, to anticipate traffic. I'm rubbish at estimating how long things take. So I'm often late. So I'll show up and already be thinking, oh, my teammates are like fed up. They're thinking she hasn't got on here. She hasn't got here on time again, and I'm already like in that negative state, and then feeling like when I do get on, I'm going to have to like prove myself, and when I come off, I'm going to have to make sure I apologize, and I'll try harder next time. So you're already, I guess, arriving in that state of being flustered and anxious. So that's something that comes up for me. And another thing that comes up for me that other people might be able to relate to as well is I'll think back over, you know, the last game. It might be that, you know, we were in a tournament on Saturday, and I got a bit hot-headed, things got a bit heated, so I showed up to the next game thinking about that, with that in my mind, thinking, oh, I feel really bad about that, you know, and wondering what people thought about that, whether it was still in people's minds. I'm sure it wasn't, but again, it's this tendency to focus on these things that have happened and to sort of dwell on them, that when you've got ADHD, it fits with something that I'm sure you're familiar with, this term that we use, it's a bit of a mouthful, rejection sensitivity dysphoria, RSD, which I just shorten it to rejection sensitivity. And it's not just about rejection, I think it's any perceived negative about you sort of on the lookout for it, anticipating it even when it's not there.
Do you also see that like you like you said, when you said then about it not being there, I think everyone does this. I just think it stays longer in an ND brain. So like, you know, you'll think you'll see things that aren't there. Because I always say to like to sort of people I know, I say, look, if you look hard enough, you're always going to find something that's shit.
That's true.
You know, aren't you? You know, and I think, you know, is that where the sort of, you know, the ND brain excels, shall we say?
Yeah, dwells on this stuff. And it can be helpful, I guess, if we flip it round, that analytical thinking. If you're dwelling on the negatives, you can really look for in situations where things perhaps haven't gone as you would like, and think in lots of detail about, well, you know, what else could have happened? What might have been another way to manage it? How could it have happened differently? So you can sort of flip it round and use it when you think like that. You can come up with all sorts of scenarios in your head, and that can work for you if you're coming up with scenarios of, all right, next time, how is that going to look? What else could I do? What are the other options? How could it have played out differently? Which can be helpful. I guess it's being able to harness that, and often you need somebody else talking with you, coming alongside you to do that, whether that's a coach, a parent, a teammate, you know, a partner, a good friend. I quite often chat things through that have happened that, you know, I'm not happy with a really good friend who also plays football, so she gets it, and it just helps having somebody, I guess, a bit removed from the situation, the emotion, to go through that with you and talk it through and pick it apart and make sense of it.
So it's maybe like I sort of, in my head, I put things in boxes, if you like, and I have literally, I focus on probably 4 things. Everything else, I don't have the sort of, I sort of see a brain as like a processor in a computer, you know. So and I see people that have got all this stuff going through their head, and it's like the processor's going so fast. You know, when your processor on your computer's going so fast, that fan comes on. People, and I just think you can see that the fan's on constantly, and it must be knackering. And I think what I know is that I don't have the capacity to sort of retain all this information. So I literally have 3 things in my head all the time: my family, work, and probably that's it. Everything else is like, it goes. And like, it's because if I try and think about stuff that aren't relevant, I'm going to forget something, or I'm going to not dwell on it, or I'm not going to understand something that I really need to understand. And like, I think when you said about, it's brilliant, you know, the positive aspect of that is that you're seeing things probably that other people don't see. The difficulty, I imagine, is it then telling yourself, I've seen it, I've dealt with it, move it on.
Exactly.
Is it, I've seen with it, I've dealt with it, oh, it's coming back.
And this is one of the things with neurodivergence, is sort of filtering out all the noise and all the thoughts and all the other stuff coming in. You've described it brilliantly, and being able to focus on the things that you need to, the key stuff, the core stuff. That's what's really hard, and that's where someone else supporting you with that can come in. And, you know, it's not a difficult or complicated thing to do, but just having somebody else be, you know, the thing that helps you focus and tune out the other stuff can really, really help. It really helps.
I always say, like, sometimes, like, my missus will say, I'm not going to be able to sleep tonight, I've got loads of stuff going around in my brain and blah 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 blah. And she says, I don't know how you do it. She says, you lay there, you look at your phone for 10 minutes, you put it down, and you're gone. And I said, well, I've learned to just clear my head. You know, I'm not saying I'm better than anyone. It's just, you know, when you see people that are like, you know, proper physical gym specimens, and you don't get that by, you know, going to gym once and then eating burgers. You've got to work at it. And so, like, I've gymmed my head, if you like. And I just said to her, I said, well, look, everything that's going in your head at the minute, write it down on your pad. So sit down, write it down, and it'll just, your brain will think that it's out there, I'm not going to forget it. I can look at it in the morning, and it might, you might not sleep brilliantly, but it might just help you with those thoughts that are running through your head.
It interrupts it whirring round and round, and that's where a conversation with somebody as well can do that. Or, like you say, writing it down, putting a note in your phone. Some people record voice notes, having a chat with somebody. It interrupts that cycle of it going round and round and round, and just like a hamster wheel.
So, like, when you said then about let's talk about, say, a young person in an academy or whatever, pre-match. Now, I think if you're not nervous about, you know, when you step on pitch, I think you're either bloody brilliant at dealing with that, or there might be something wrong with it, because it's natural, isn't it, to be nervous?
And you need a sort of certain level of adrenaline and arousal to be in your peak, you know, performance. Yeah.
But how would that, if I'm a coach and I've got, say, 18 to 20 players in my match day squad, and let's say there's maybe one or two of us, it's difficult, isn't it, to see everyone's body language. It's difficult.
Yeah.
What sort of things could I be looking for in my players to alert me to the fact that they've turned up in that, you use the term, in flight mode?
Yeah, and this is where I guess getting to know your players and how they all look and respond in different situations is key. But some common ones might be if somebody's gone really, really quiet, or, you know, or if they're talking a lot. That's, you know, there's two extremes there where it can happen, because that can show somebody's just really overwhelmed. If somebody's asking a lot of questions, I've seen that before. That suggests they're in an anxious state. Yeah. And sometimes getting into a discussion and isn't helpful when somebody's in that state. I think it really depends on those individuals and how they show up when they're anxious, when they're under pressure. You know, just simple stuff like somebody might appear agitated, you know, they might not be able to sit still. And I mean, you will get people moving around, obviously, in the lead up to a match because people are warming up and stuff, but it's looking for the telltale signs in your players where they're, like, you know, different or not how you would expect. I don't know if you've noticed any signs in your coaching.
If I look at my son, he's the king of masking.
Yeah, and this is what makes it really difficult.
He's mastered the art of it. And it goes down to his personality, and it goes down to his condition. And like when you said about asking lots of questions, now if we're doing anything from an autism perspective, I can see that he likes to know what's going on and where we're going to be and who's going to be there, and boom, 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 boom. So if it's anything football or not football related, he'll ask me and his mum loads of questions, and I can see it's the anxiety about not knowing what's coming. However, if it's anyone else, and if he turned up to a football match and his coach is there, his coach will just see Jude just being Jude, not seeing, and this isn't the coach's fault, this is the masking element of neurodiversity, and I think that's what makes it hard.
It really does.
Or
you might not notice anything.
No, and this is why I think that football needs to understand what we're talking about more, to understand that just because someone's not showing signs of, you know, ND in a general term, doesn't mean to say they've not got it. I spoke to an academy yesterday, and said they had one player with an EHCP, and you know they needed some support around that player. And I said, you've got one player with an EHCP. If you're in a squad of 18, you've probably got at least 3 or 4 players that either probably not been diagnosed but have some form of ND. But if you don't know what you're looking for, and sometimes if you think about it, how can you look for something? How can you see something that's invisible? And that's the difficulty around the condition for the people that are living with it and the people that are there to support them, especially from a kid's perspective, because kids don't always don't have the confidence as well to sort of always put their hand up, do they? Especially if you know, I'm sort of pigeonholing it a bit, but I'm using my son as an example, who's, you know, very shy. And doesn't want everyone to be looking at him and seeing that he doesn't know.
They don't want to stand out. They just want to blend in, get their head down. And that makes it really difficult for anyone who doesn't know them well. And I guess this is where parents, carers, you know, people who know that person come in. And it's so important, isn't it, to have those conversations, that relationship. I mean, it's a bit easier if it's been identified and diagnosed, because usually that family and the people involved with them will be coming sharing that information, but we don't always know. You know, it can show up over time, and that this is where it's so important. I know I'm preaching to the converted here, that clubs, coaches, organisations are aware of what neurodiversity, neurodivergence is, what autism is, what ADHD is. They're the two most common ones. Obviously, there's other forms, so that they can notice any subtle signs, and it all comes through getting to know those individuals as well, doesn't it, over time, because we know about masking, and I mean, it's true for everybody. At first, we're probably not our true selves in any particular situation, and it's only over time you get to know a person and see that. So speaking to families and parents, understanding, is there anything that young person struggles with, finds challenging, doesn't like? They're all ways to sort of start to get this information, but as you say, it might not be clear, it might not be obvious, even to the family, to parents.
A number of academies, conversations I've had with people from academies, they've said that one of the difficult things they experience is having a conversation with a parent about it if they suspect there's some ND there. And they've said that I call them PCGs, so parents, carers, guardians.
Yeah.
So they've said to me that this is numerous people within professional academies have said to me that when we've tried to approach this topic with the PCG, they've a lot of them actually are offended by us approaching the topic, and they said that's something we struggle with as well, that we think there's something there, we want to support the player in the best way possible for them, but when we try and approach the PCGs about it,
they're having that,
many of them you can see visually and verbally taking offense to it. How can you approach that conversation from a coach perspective?
I wonder if that's coming from a place of those parents and guardians experiencing that as, you know, a potential threat, or, you know, oh, they've picked up something negative, so that might mean that my child's place, their position in that team, in that club, might be under threat if they've picked up something negative. And I'm wondering if that's where initially this response comes from, you know, oh my gosh, you know, we don't want that. And obviously it's not coming from that place. I'm sure it's not 9 times.
It's the exact opposite place it's coming from, actually, isn't it? It's we want to get the best and do the best for your person.
And I guess thinking about it from a parent or guardian's point of view, you know, probably their child's place at the club, at the organisation is, you know, a really big thing that they absolutely are invested in and do not want to lose. So we need to understand it from their point of view, that maybe they're not ready to hear anything that they perceive might actually threaten that or be viewed as some sort of weakness. And here comes in, I guess, the stigma around neurodivergence, that, you know, a parent, a family, or anyone might have that response, but there is still a stigma around it. I think how I would approach it, and this might be how, you know, coaches you've come across approach it, is really coming from the point of view of, we really want to help your child be the best that they can be, and we've just noticed that there's some things that they find trickier, they you know, deal with differently, that are more challenging, really framing it as that, and we want to support them with it to enable them to be the best that they can be. And I guess normalizing it as well, and making it clear to those parents that their child absolutely is not the only one who might be experiencing these challenges, and actually it's more common than you think. It's just many people don't talk about it, and there's strengths associated with neurodivergence, as we know, and particularly in sport really draws in and captures many neurodivergent people, because you know, it's a way to harness their skills, their their brains, their, you know, hyper focus, dedication, passion, commitment. You know, for some people, the repetition, they really thrive with that. So sport and neurodivergence can really go hand in hand and be a great combination. But I think we're still at a point, it's where mental health in sport was at, you know, a few years back. We're still at a point where it's sort of perceived, viewed as a threat, as a negative, you know, wrongfully, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think if you look at football, you know, I think we're 5 years behind where we should be in society around things like neurodiversity, mental health, racism, sexism, you know, all of equality.
Difference.
So we're 5 years behind in society where we should be. Football, I think, is 5 years behind where society is.
Yeah.
It always is. And whatever people said to me, I said, well, talk about racism then. Miles away. We're miles off it. We've done nothing about it. Talk about equality. We've done nothing about it. Certainly in the men's game anyway. The women's game seems more, you know, equal, shall I say. You know, there's less judgment in the women's game from players, from spectators of all genders.
Yeah.
We're miles behind where we should be. And I think when you talked about the stigma around neurodiversity, definitely. And I think for me, two great points you hit on there were, you know, explaining to the PCGs that this is not an uncommon thing.
No.
And that, you know, framing it that this in no way, shape or form has any say on your child's future at this academy.
No.
You know, this is not something that we're going to be looking to score them against. We're actually looking to score them on in a positive way. And I imagine it is a very awkward thing. And how do you approach that? You know, it's like, because people will think you're saying there's something wrong with my child. No,
exactly.
I'm not. But
especially if it's new to them and they haven't considered it before, and that puts whoever it is having the conversation in a really difficult position. But it's a really important thing to raise, because it could really make a difference if then we uncover that, understand it, equip everyone to support that individual, and then hopefully they can thrive. You know, we see players like Lucy Bronze. I love that she's been coming out and speaking about her experiences and her journey, and we're getting more and more, you know, pro footballers being more open about it. There still aren't many, which again speaks to what we've just talked about, but more and more are feeling like they're able to share that. And I think it's important to highlight that there are people really succeeding at high levels who are neurodivergent. You know, you can. It's absolutely possible.
Do you think, though, and my opinion on this is that because football, certainly the higher you go up, the further you go up, it's a results business. Yeah. And I think why people, and a term you use there will come out, which is like, it sounds ridiculous, but it is what people think and say and do. And I use that term. When I think people might think, if I, you know, talk to someone about something I suspect I might be living with, is it giving them a reason to somewhere down the line drop me, sell me, if we're talking about top level? And I see it in corporate world as well. I've spoke to people, you know, and they've said, well, I ain't said anything to my boss about it. Why? And certainly the higher you go up, it's not as well, because they'll say, well,
these high stakes.
Yeah, they'll think I can't cope. They'll leave me out of projects. They'll pass me up for a promotion. Boom, boom, boom. Take that into football, and the principle's completely the same. That people are scared to talk about their mental health, if they do feel that they're neurodiverse, even going as far as what we've talked about, you know, equality from a sexuality perspective. And this is where football is miles behind the curve, that I don't think it gives players and the families of players safe spaces to talk about this.
Came into my mind, that safety isn't there, is it, in terms of the culture?
But I think it is with the women's game. You know, that's the feeling I get. So I was going to go back to another point, but while we're on that, why do you think then, why is the women's game different to the men's game?
I think, I mean, as somebody who plays in you know, inclusive women's football spaces. I think there's a broader culture of inclusion. Certainly, you know, I play obviously at grassroots level, and it is more inclusive, and it's explicitly inclusive. You know, trans players are welcome in the league I play for, which isn't FA affiliated. It's set up as a safe, inclusive space with the aim of everybody enjoying themselves, being able to play. And I guess that's been deliberate, hasn't it? Because, you know, there is a significant proportion of people in the women's game who have other minority identities, you know, if we're thinking about sexuality, gender, all of that. So an effort has been made to set it up as being a more inclusive space. Whereas that's quite different, isn't it, in the men's game, that there's still various taboos and stigmas. So I think personally that's the difference. Obviously, there's a whole load of complexities around that. And I wouldn't say women's football is, you know, there's no work to be done and it's fully inclusive. And I know there's been recent discussions around racism still being evident in the women's game. So there's still lots of work to be done. But I think there is that explicit culture of we want everybody to feel safe. We acknowledge there's differences, but it's much more explicit in women's football.
I love that. I'm going to nick it, that explicitly inclusive.
Yeah,
that is brilliant term. It is. It's just bang on, and what we all should be, shouldn't it? So I've gone off tangent in my head actually, because when we're talking about address or sort of speaking to PCGs about perceived, you know, ND conditions and the difficulty around it, and we talk about stigma and how it might feel like a reason that my kid's going to get dropped or moved on or not taken on further. Generally, is that the right term? Often, maybe. If the child's got it, one of the PCGs.
I was going to bring that up. Yeah.
And maybe they aren't aware of their condition because they just feel I'm just different to people, and they've not had that support, understanding, or awareness to think I need to speak to someone about this. And maybe it triggers something in them that they think about themselves and they don't want it for the kids. Would that be sort of fair to say that?
Absolutely. It's an experience I encounter. It's fairly common. So that feels threatening to them because if my child's neurodivergent, that sort of is speaking to some of the things that I've noticed about myself that maybe I'm not ready to go near yet. And somebody's presented me with this. It can feel really threatening, but also, again, in my experience, it can end up being such a helpful journey for not just the young person but the whole family, in terms of everybody making sense of whatever neurodivergence is there in their family, and ultimately it ends up being a positive thing. There's so many parents I work with. I also work with adults, and often a sort of trigger for them going down the assessment route is that they've been through it with their child and it's made them realize so much about them, and they've sort of gone, well, I was like that as a kid and I do that, and actually I want to understand this more because I think it applies to me. But I guess it's got to be done sensitively, gently, and that might feel like a lot for a coach or another member of you know, a sports club and organisation. It's a really important role.
I think when you talk about pro clubs, you know, at the top level, they have the resources in the staff number of staff who deal with certain elements of player care that can do that. But then as you go further down the leagues, I've spoken to clubs, League One, League Two clubs, where their academy manager or player care, basically they're both, they've said to me, we've got from like under 8 to under 18s, and there's 20 players in each age group, and I'm responsible for everything.
It's a lot, isn't it? They wear many hats,
and obviously the resources financially aren't there. Lower down the you know, even in the professional game, the resources aren't there.
And they're covering so many different things, safeguarding, you know, physical health stuff. There's covering so many bases. It's a lot, isn't it?
Yeah, but like when we just very quickly go back to talking to PCGs about potential ND conditions, and then the reaction is negative. There's an element of rejection sensitivity in there, maybe from the parents as well, if they've got it.
Yeah, there could be, and that's a hard conversation to have. And I guess the person who's having the conversation, are they being supported by colleagues, you know, other people around that? Because it can feel like, and I've had this conversation and suggested things where it's not landed well. It can feel like, oh my gosh, should I have not said anything? Was that the wrong thing to do? It's absolutely the right thing to do. Somebody might not be ready to hear it.
Yeah.
And then it's about, you know, do you revisit that again? Do you just leave it? And it's a really difficult one. And I think having support from whoever is around you to work that out is really, really helpful, because it can feel like, oh, well, I did the wrong thing by even raising that. But I would always say it's absolutely not the wrong thing.
Yeah, I agree. Well, like one thing that concerns me for, if we're talking, well, any club, but certainly professional clubs, is if they don't address this, and I don't mean it in a negative way, like sometimes you might as well say, I've got to address this with you, and it's like, oh, this is a positive addressing. If they don't address this, then in my opinion, and what I am worried about with professional clubs is that at some point someone is going to litigate against them down the Equality Act route.
Yeah.
And these are the conversations that we're having that they just don't understand. You've got a duty of care under the Equality Act to make adjustments for every individual, just like any place of work. And I think that I can see coming at some point is a player gets let go, released. It comes out that player is neurodivergent, and the family then litigate against the club for under the Equality Act. Yeah. And this is what we're saying, is that you've got to be having these conversations to protect the player, to help the player, but also from an organizational perspective, you've got to protect your organization as well. And if you're not doing it, at some point, it's like one of them things. I think once someone does it, then it'll just, the dominoes will fall, and it won't be like, it could even be like a no-win, no-fee job.
Well, we see this in workplaces. Yeah.
There's that many kids go through the academy system, and for me, you know, the academy system, certainly at the younger age, is just like a conveyor belt. You're only on it till someone better comes along. Now, I've in my capacity, what I do, you get academy scouts coming to you all the time. Oh, can you bring your boys up? We'll have a look at them. A couple might get taken on. It is very transient, but I think, as you alert to at start, parents don't see that. PCGs don't see it. They get so invested in it.
It's their dreams. It's
their dream, isn't it? And then when it doesn't work out, because it's not gonna for 99.9%.
That's the reality.
When you're hurt, it's human nature to look for someone to blame, isn't it? And look for and I just think that I'm really concerned for clubs that one person does it, you're going to get some ambulance chasing lawyers saying, have you been let go from a professional academy through no fault of your own? And it'll be down to the clubs to prove.
Exactly.
Not for them to prove to the clubs, you know. And I just think that from that perspective, it's a bit of a time bomb. And I'm not trying to sound dramatic, but I think it's a bit of a time bomb for clubs.
I've seen it in workplaces because I've worked in that space as well. And then what's coming out in I guess the employment law and the tribunals is that not already having it formally identified or a diagnosis is not an excuse. So we need to be looking for it and, you know, trying to put in the adaptations, trying to raise awareness, doing all this stuff regardless of whether there is a diagnosis or not, because I know the argument will be, well, we didn't know that they didn't have a diagnosis, but that doesn't stand anymore.
You got to have evidence that you have actually on several occasions did try to discover, that's probably not the right term, but try to...
No, it is. I think discover is a great term. And I think with all of this, again, in a workplace setting, there's so many parallels. Anything you're going to be doing along the lines of trying to work out individuals' communication styles, things they find tricky, putting those things in place, raising awareness, is going to benefit everybody. It's like a no-brainer. And I know there's usually the concern of, well, that'll create extra work, that'll create extra cost, it'll require resources, but you can do it in a smart way, which actually will benefit everybody.
But like football clubs aren't immune to the same demands that other businesses are. And I think football in the professional game, it's in its own bubble, isn't it?
Oh, it is.
It's in its own bubble, and it thinks it's different to other places. And to a certain extent, it is. But it's only because those outside the bubble are not in it. You know, because very few people get in that bubble of football, don't they? Professional football, 0.001% make it to Premier League, 0.1% make it as a professional, bam, bam, bam. So inside that bubble, very few people get in there. But for me, there are hundreds of thousands of people that are on the periphery, just outside that bubble, that don't get into that bubble, and they're gonna at some point try and pop it because they've not got into that bubble. And
I see that
football is just, what I see in football is like, it's so results oriented at the professional level that they're like thinking, they're literally thinking game. The whole organization is thinking next game. Even the bloody office staff. The culture is Wednesday. If you're a Premier League club, Wednesday, Saturday. And if you're playing in Europe, you know the leadership who should be driving this are away with the team, so they're out of the country a lot. They're dealing with other stuff, and the actual organizational really bedrock of what a football not football club but an organization is the people. But everything's set on that first team, isn't it? And I'm not saying that's wrong. It just concerns me that football thinks it's immune to what other businesses are experiencing now. And when you said about all the things, all the hoops businesses have to jump through, whether you're a one-man band or you're a multinational, and you've got one employee or 1 million, you've still got to do the same things. You've still got to investigate. You've still got to make reasonable judgments. You've still got to, really jump over so many hoops. And I don't think football, when they're bringing these young players into their academies and then shipping them off, they're not. It's just, that's football. You know what it's like. Know what it's like. But most people, but most PCGs, they don't actually know what football's like, do they? Because they've not played it, they've not experienced it. So I think football thinks everyone knows what it knows, but most PCGs have not played it, and if they have, it's not at a high level, so they don't understand what the game is. What and like what could a football club do then? And this is not a one size fits all, but let's talk about neurodiversity. We're talking about, we've got players that guaranteed are gonna have it. First team down to under 8s. There's gonna be players in every age band, aren't there? What can clubs be doing to protect themselves and to help and protect the players and the PCGs?
I think the first thing, and again, this is what I've seen working with workplaces, is at the highest level, making a commitment to, openly saying, this is something that's important to us. We want to understand this and get better at it. We want to create a safe culture where people who play for our club, work for our club, have any sort of dealings with our club, would feel okay if they were neurodivergent being in our space. They would feel safe. They would feel like if they wanted to, they could be open about it. So that needs to come from the top. There needs to be a commitment, even if, a club or organisation is currently at a point where they don't really know a lot about it and don't really pay much attention to it. That very clear vocal commitment to that, and telling and showing everybody this is important to us, like racism, like other stuff, you know, around diversity and inclusion. I think that is the first step, sending out that clear message, following that up with an actual strategy. Okay, what are we actually going to do about that then to be able to achieve that aim? So one of the things I usually advise is, at a minimum, everybody having some level of training about what neurodiversity and neurodivergence is and why we need to know about it. So all the things you've talked about, the stats, you know, helping people realize it's not as rare as they think.
Yeah.
They will be working with somebody who's neurodivergent. They will certainly have players who are neurodivergent, whether it's recognized or not. So a level of training and awareness raising, that then hopefully will help people feel a bit more, I mean, they might not feel very skilled in it, but like they know the basics. And then I think having more specialist advice from somebody who knows about it, whether that's somebody who does some specific training with coaches around, okay, what does that look like for the age groups you cover? What are the typical challenges those individuals might face? Or some sort of regular consultation with somebody who knows about it. It might be that there's somebody already within the organisation who's passionate about it, who's neurodivergent themselves, or who is a parent, or who has some other, I guess, direct experience of it, who wants to take the role of some sort of, you know, ambassador or, you know, champion for it, who people can go to with the day-to-day. Oh, okay, this has come up, I'm really not sure what to do about it, I'm suspecting this, but they have a clear person to go to, so those conversations are happening, they're not just being swept under the carpet, which that is common too, that maybe people have had some training on it, but then they think, I've noticed this, but I'm really not sure what to do with it, so I'm just gonna like ignore it. I think people need clear sort of processes and mechanisms of, well, I've noticed something, I want to help, I want to do something about it, where do I go? I think that's really important. And also our clubs, our organisations, asking the questions, you know, when they have somebody new come on board, whether that's, you know, a member of their staff or a player, you know, are they asking, do you need any specific accommodations or things that you find tricky? Is there anything we should know, you know, in terms of how we help you? Because obviously you can't ask specific questions. You can on forms about disclosing disability and that sort of thing. You can't, I guess, directly ask, but if you're asking the questions of how can we enable you to be the best version of you, are the things we can help you with, and hopefully those things are coming out, and regularly asking them too, because people's situations change.
Not just at the start of the season when you come in to, you know, get your weight and everything checked. Oh yeah, tick tick tick, all right, off we go. It's an ongoing thing, but I think like
it's very focused on the physical stuff though, isn't it? This is what I found.
But like 99% of football's played here.
Yeah.
Now, and I get you've got to be fit. You've got to be fit, but you've also got to be mentally fit to be able to be physically fit, in my opinion. You can be the most physical specimen in the world, but if you don't know how to control your emotions, and if you don't know how to deal with certain situations, and if your resilience is not there, then no matter how fit you are, you're not gonna fulfill your potential. And like, you know, you look at the actual peak players, you look at two everyone thinks about, you know, Messi and Ronaldo. Yeah, they're actual mental monsters, and that is what I think Pep Guardiola actually talked. He actually described Messi as a mentality monster. And when I say mental monster, I mean a mentality monster. I know what you mean. You know, he said he's a mentality monster, and so no matter how good he is with the ball at his feet, and it's just God knows, God-given talent, if you believe in that. He's still got to have everything. He's got to have the tools here to be able to utilize that God-given talent. And football, as you said, going back to, we're saying 5 years behind, I think in this it's probably 20 years behind. You know, the old school 80s, well, it's longer than 20 years, 80s, 90s then, or whatever, it's a long time. You know, the old school, you know, run them till they drop. And like, I've never understood why. I know they do have them now, clubs, you know, psychologists and things like that. I could never get years ago why clubs didn't have, you know, psychologists and like, I remember when like back in 90s and early 2000s when England would go to tournaments And I think, why have they not got psychologists? Because to me, it's not a talent thing with English. If we talk about England as a football team, it's not a talent thing. Can't be.
Yeah.
And
I think, I mean, part of the reason why that's changed in academies is because of the, the EPPP framework says if you're at this level, you need to have X, Y, and Z, and one of them stipulates a psychologist. And again, I think it's only when things are coming from the top, we think you should put this in place. This is important, that then it starts trickling through. And you still get, obviously, lower level category academies who don't have that. I mean, that's partly because of resources. I've been in conversations with some, at lower league clubs, and they want to invest in it, but they're not sure it's worth the money. And I think it's almost that you don't know what you don't know. When you understand, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be a psychologist, but people who know about this stuff, when you understand the benefits of what that then will bring to everybody, not just neurodivergent players, in my head, it's like a win-win thing, but obviously money does come into it.
I agree with 100%. And this is what I say to everyone, is that it comes from the top. And in our game, if you look at who the top is, Premier League, FA, obviously the Premier League is all about the Premier League. The FA is not just about professional football, it's about everyone as well down to grassroots. And like one criticism I have is that I can see that a lot of clubs want to do something about it, and a lot of county FAs want to do something about it, but because it's not a directive, it's not a must have. It's a nice to have. And when it's a nice to have, you don't put resources to it. When it's a must have, you've got to put the resources to it, which is people and money and time. And it's not allowed to do that. And it's I just sort of say, like, football's brilliant at safeguarding. It's only brilliant at safeguarding because it missed a shitload of stuff years ago. And what I say to everyone in any hierarchy is, I don't want us to be there with mental health and neurodiversity where we are. We say only be there with mental health and safeguarding because we didn't do what we could have done years ago. Because
the cost of that to all those people who were affected by that, it's just horrific. It's awful.
Yeah, ignore the financial cost, and that's unfortunately what it's about. But the actual cost to the people that are not being supported correctly and not are being let down by the system, and I do feel they are.
That's a bugbear of mine with the FA. I mean, when I last looked, as far as I'm aware, they do have like a head of mental health, a mental health lead. I don't think they have a neurodiversity lead currently. That may have changed recently. But that is sending out a very clear message that that's not top of our agenda, like other forms of diversity and inclusion.
They're big on inclusion, and the massive on inclusion at FA, and I think that's brilliant. And a lot of the inclusion is about people with my skin tone.
What do we mean by inclusion? What does that include?
I've spoken to so many people about this. From a inquisitive perspective, from what message are people getting from this, and they all said to me, it's about skin tone in inclusion. And I just say, some will say skin tone, some will say rainbow laces,
things to different people,
but because the message, like you say, is and a lot of county FAs, all they talk about is skin tone of participants. And I can say that because I don't have a white skin tone, so I'm not offending anyone. It's what it is, but it's the perception of what people have around inclusion, and it is generally, it's skin tone and sexuality. And I'm never going to judge anyone for saying that, because it's the responsibility of those in any silo, for want of a better term. It's the responsibility of those at the top to make sure that their stakeholders understand the message that they're giving out, and they're not giving that message out correctly. And like you say, it's a matter of, this isn't top of our agenda. And I just think, how can it not be when so many people are living with it? And the stats say, 20%? The boots on the ground evidence, Fleur, what we get from people day-to-day basis at games, at training, easily 40%. Charlie Austin, who, as you said, came out with ADHD a while ago, he said to me, he said, the amount of phone calls I get from professional footballers now,
really,
saying to me, Charlie, I think I've got it. And he says, they're ringing me because they know it's a safe space. They know I understand their life, their place of work. And they're talking to me. And from what I've said about how I was, they're ringing me up and my phone's going mad. He says, with pros who either know me or get me number from other ex-pros who know me and ring me up and say, Charlie, I think it's me. Yeah. And he just, you know, I'm not going to, I can't say what his thoughts on it are, but I know what my thoughts on it are. Yeah. Complete neglect of people that are earning hundreds of thousands of pounds a week, but we can't afford, or we don't have the time, or we don't have the inclination to put things in place where they can speak to someone at a club and not someone that they don't know.
I was talking to somebody about this yesterday. You've only got to look at former players who, you know, may or may not have diagnoses, but who faced very public challenges in their lives. And I look at some of them and I think, I wonder if you're neurodivergent and whether your path and your story could have been very different if that had been picked up. I mean, we don't know, we can only speculate, but
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. People that have had other challenges, like, you know, addiction, alcoholism, things like that. And I'd speak to, I'm not saying Stephen Corker has any form of neurodiversity, but I spoke with him about his career and where it went. And like, you know, he said to me, he said, like, the worst thing that I did was tell the club I was with at the time about my addiction. He says, because I was just ostracized. And he were very good about it, because he said it were different back then. You know, he's not 60 in Stephen. I think he's about early 30s, mid 30s. So this is modern day football we're talking about. But it was very complimentary about the club. So they were different back then. They didn't know how to handle it. He said, I got no support. I got nothing. And I just said to him, I said, you must look at players that you played with and think, I were better than them, and look where they are now.
That's the sad thing.
And there's always an underlying thing around an issue that you have, gambling, addiction, things like that. And like, I'm not saying Stephen has ND, but
no, but there is always
very common, isn't it? And when you're constantly being told that you are wrong, your brain is wrong, you should be doing this, you should be doing that. All your life, people are telling you you're shit, basically, aren't you? And like, I sort of use the terminology like schools. You know, school works for 4% of people. Yeah. And really, what it's telling everyone is, if you've got a good memory, you're going to get on in life, because you just need to remember what the answers are to a test, and you're laughing. And how many people learn like that?
I know. And it just worries me for the future players, for the future people. If we don't sort this out, there's going to be more people who face these challenges, and in a very public way. You know, if they go pro, it's heartbreaking. But we can be better. We can get better at this stuff. There's definitely work to be done. There really is. And I was just going to say, it's frustrating, and I'm sure you can relate to this, because I see pockets of this going on in grassroots clubs, in lower league clubs, where they really do care about this, and it is on their agenda, and they're looking for leadership and looking for places to go with it. And it's like, well, what is that?
Bang on. Yeah, it's like we run a regular understanding neurodiversity and grassroots course, and we do it on Zoom. And the reason being, for a number of reasons, but firstly, it's like practicing what we're preaching. So like I said to people, I say, you know, you say to someone, I'm going to send you on a training course about neurodiversity, Fleur. Oh, brilliant, love that. You're going to be in a room, bright lights, a load of people you don't know. You're going to be asked to interact, and you can't hide really, because you're in front of everyone, and you might get asked a question. If you don't answer it, you might look stupid. Oh, shit. Where when we do it by what we're doing now, you can see the interaction is amazing, because people can switch the camera off, they can chat on the type chat, and what we often see is that cameras are switched off at start, and we'll ask questions about their interactions with neurodiversity, blah, blah, and the type chat is just absolutely immense, And then you see people then switching the camera ons and getting involved, and it's like, you know, you're on this, you can get up, go for a drink, walk round, you know, move. You're not sat at a chair and worried that everyone's looking at you, and am I going to get asked a question, and if I don't answer it, everyone will know I've not answered it, and blah, 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 blah. And when you said that, I think people and clubs are looking for leadership. You're absolutely bang on, because it sells out every time does these neurodiversity courses. And
brilliant. That's so brilliant.
Yeah, it is. And like you said, though, the grassroots clubs need, they know, you know, when you've been impacted, and I think this about mental health and neurodiversity and any form of stigma or you know, ism, whatever you want to call it, people are like, they don't address it until it's affected them. Yeah. You know, I've been talking to a league down south about you know, we've talked about, you know, running some mental health first aid training, which we do, and we've done it, and it's, you know, we do it. And then I got a phone call, and he says, Danny, we need to get this mental health first aid training sorted for us. I says, why? We had a committee meeting, we had people breaking down, explaining to us the toll that the season had taken on the mental health, and we need to sort it. And it just hit home to me that, you know, often you don't deal with stuff until it's hit you, you know, and neurodiversity and mental health for me are the same. But just before we wrap up, Fleur, I want to touch on a few things. So we've touched on sort of RSD, rejection sensitivity, and how, you know, from a coach's perspective, often players are given a kick up the arse, aren't they? Yeah. You know,
love, they call it, don't they?
Now, it's classic adage, you know, some players need an arm round them, some players need a kick up the arse.
Yeah.
When it comes to sort of RSD, it's difficult for a coach. If you don't know a player's living with it, and if you do, how do you deal with it? What sort of tips could you give a coach to get the best out of a player that does live with RSD? And it physically can impact people.
Yeah, it really does. I think making them aware of what it is can really, really help, so that when they have these, or they might have these really strong reactions to feedback or things that they've given, they're aware that, oh, okay, I think that's what's going on there. Because what I have seen sometimes is when somebody isn't aware of what that is, and then they further criticize that person for their reaction or their response, and that just makes it even worse for everybody. So I guess having that understanding of it does really, really help. And then if you know that somebody really struggles with that, I mean, obviously everybody struggles with negative feedback, you can approach it in a way that, you know, you're really framing it as, you know, I want to think with you, you know, come alongside you, think together with you about some of the things that you've really struggled with, or that you found really challenging. So it feels like less of a personal attack. It still may feel like that for that individual, but trying as much as possible to convey that you're trying to support them. You know, you're not trying to criticize them. You're trying to help them with their development. That's the reason why you bring in whatever it is. But you want to help them be the best version of themselves. So really trying to frame it positively. And none of that is easy to do and takes practice. I think when people see, though, when they sort of take that sort of slightly different approach, how it lands, or usually lands a bit better, you can then see, oh, right, okay, I can see why that person might need that feeding back slightly differently. It might be about revisiting things. So somebody, regardless of what you say, they might still get the RSD response. You know, you could have framed it really sensitively, really positively, and they still take that as, you know, I've done badly there, or I've let people down.
You hate me, you think I'm crap.
Yeah. So I think revisiting it, coming back to conversations and reflecting on that. And I've had people do this with me, like saying, you know, I know you really felt that when we had that chat last week, or when you did that thing. I know you really blamed yourself. I know you have a tendency to, you know, interpret that as in a really, you know, all or nothing way, that we're saying that you're terrible at whatever. And I guess that's helping that individual understand what's going on there as well. So coming back to it at a later point going, yeah, no, that was really hard for you. But, you know, where we're trying to get to here is thinking about this particular thing and helping you deal with it, or, you know, thinking about other ways you could have managed that, and really making the focus about that individual's development, learning, you know, being a better player, not framing it as things they've done wrong or shouldn't have done, or whatever it might be. And I think there's a real opportunity to, you know, through real life experiences, to support somebody to become more resilient to their RSD and notice it themselves, and, you know, be able to handle it a bit more. There's a real opportunity in sport to work with somebody on that.
Yeah.
Have experiences of that happening, but somebody, you know, working with them through it and it actually turning out to be a helpful experience. That's huge. That's such an opportunity.
Is it like saying to them, look, I understand you know, you find this difficult, but I also understand why you find it difficult, and that is that second part is the real door opener into. I understand why, and
it's
the
helping
why
them understand themselves as well, because they may not even clock that that's what's going on for them. Sometimes I don't, and I know all about this stuff. You know, in that moment where you've taken something as a criticism, you may not be able to reflect and step back and realize, oh, I've done that thing again because my RSD's got going. And it can only, you know, sometimes it's only afterwards that we're able to see that, but somebody else talking you through it can really help. And acknowledging and recognizing you really struggle with hearing this stuff, and I know you take it personally, I know you sort of think the worst, you know, helping them understand what's going on as well can be really, really powerful
for you both.
Yeah.
So could we just then briefly touch on ODD and PDA, which
interesting,
will show up quite a lot on a football pitch during a match and during training. So should we start with ODD? Could you explain what that is and how it could manifest on a pitch or in a training session?
So ODD is quite an interesting one. Psychologists tend to avoid kind of using that description, but it stands for oppositional defiant disorder.
Why do they avoid using it? It's out of interest.
Because I guess it's stigmatizing and labeling a response to something that we can, you know, try and understand. And I think sometimes, not always, the danger with labeling is that you just call it that thing and you're not trying to understand why. I don't think that happens to the same degree with autism and ADHD. But I guess with oppositional defiant disorder, you know, I can see why it's there as a description, but the most important thing for me is working out, well, what is going on with that? Why is that individual being oppositional? And by oppositional, we mean, you know, it can look like deliberately not following instructions, deliberately and intentionally disagreeing with things. You know, we call that being oppositional. That can come from many different places. It can come from somebody feeling under threat, having low self-esteem. You know, if they've grown up in an environment where everybody around them is quite critical or even abusive, then they might develop that style, that really confrontational style. There's all sorts of reasons why. And I think when somebody's presenting like that, you need to get, what is that about? Is it because they feel scared? You know, is it because, you know, there's all sorts of reasons why it might be. So that's the most important thing for me. And then PDA is an interesting one, because what people have talked about in the clinical world is that individuals who were previously labelled with ODD are now being described with PDA, which is pathological demand avoidance, although it's not a formal diagnosis. And that's what we're seeing, that sort of seems to be a term that is replacing it, even though in my mind they're sort of two different things. I think about PDA or demand avoidance as, you know, if we get to what it's talking about, it's the avoidance of demands. Again, it's, well, what's going on there? If somebody's avoiding demands, that they're maybe scared overwhelmed, they're not understanding what they need to do. There's also a strong drive for autonomy usually involved, so somebody feeling out of control, so then they're having to take back that control by refusing to do the thing or to go along with the demands. And often the demand feels scary, threatening, overwhelming, so the person is opting out. And that's really, really hard to work with if you're a coach, a teacher, a parent. But if we think about, again, what's going on underneath that, why is that individual responding like that? How are they feeling? What is it about that situation that feels too hard that it means they're refusing to do the thing? That's when we can helpfully think around it and think about ways to support them and help them engage with the thing we want them to do. And it might be that, you know, we use different language that helps them feel in control. So instead of saying, you need to do that thing, it's about, we've got to get this done next. You know, it's slightly indirect, or saying, you know, you have to put those yellow bibs on. It might be, do you want to pick up the green bibs or the yellow bibs? Yeah.
Giving them like, letting them think like they've got a say in what you're asking them to do.
So yeah, there's very subtle things we can do that just, I guess, make that demand seem less scary, less direct, less overwhelming, less threatening. But it's important to understand what is going on there in that situation, rather than what some people do. They just double down on it and then punish that person and then say, well, they've got to learn, and just keep imposing more demands, and then they just see more of this behaviour. Yeah.
It's like antagonism only breeds more antagonism on the other way, doesn't it?
Struggle.
Like a mirror, isn't it? It just keeps coming back both sides. So how can these two, or how do these two, I don't want to say conditions, but situations or whatever, how can they manifest themselves? Or, you know, what sort of things, how do they show up on a football pitch, basically?
So exactly the stuff I've talked about. If you ask somebody to do them sort of saying, no, I'm not doing that, or them going and doing something different. And, you know, quite often that's put down to an attitude problem. And, you know, I can see where people are coming from when they label it as that, but labeling it as an attitude problem, is that getting us anywhere? Like, the assumption there is that you just need to change your attitude. Okay, well, you ask them to change their attitude, they're probably not just going to go, all right, I'll suddenly do what you want me to do. It doesn't work, really, do it? No matter how much we as the adult might think they've got a terrible attitude and they need to change it, that approach, if it is, you know, these sorts of presentations, is not going to work. The approach that's going to work is thinking, you know, putting yourself in their shoes, like, what's going on for them there? Do they feel like overwhelmed by the demand? Are they anxious about what it is? Do they feel like, you know, they want to be in charge of the situation? Are there ways that we can do that? You also might find individuals just deliberately doing the opposite, you know, giving back chat, that sort of thing. And it's really difficult, because what parents and coaches will say to me is, well, how is that different to, you know, like teenage behavior or somebody just being a pain? And it all comes back to whatever's underlying it. So if that child has really, really low, or that young person has really, really low self-esteem, and one of the ways they get to feel in control and like bigger is, you know, saying no to adults, because, you know, some young people wouldn't dare do that, and then they've dared to do it and realize, oh, when I do that, I feel powerful, I feel, you know, and so they do it more.
A bit of a boost.
Then we can understand where that's come from, and we can think about other ways we can help them feel like that, so they don't need to do this particular behavior. But just telling somebody off does not work. You just get in a power struggle.
Brilliant.
And that's probably what people might see, you know, on a football field. But it is difficult to work out, is this, I guess, just general back chat and, you know, somebody being a pain, or is it something more than that? And again, that's where it comes to understanding and noticing your players and what might be going on for them.
I think that's difficult as well from an adult perspective, to certainly adult-child relationship, is sometimes the adult's ego gets in the way and won't allow them to. Well, it's not. I've got to show I'm in charge, and and things like difficult
expectations, isn't it? You know, I've got to be showing to the other kids that I won't take any nonsense.
It's difficult, and it goes back then to not just educating the coaches, but educating the whole team about what we've talked about today. So the other players at whatever age understand why. Understand basically that everyone's brain works differently. And sometimes some people's brain works in a way that they don't want it to, but it just does, for want of a better term. So there's no judgment from the teammates as well.
And they might get a different approach, but there's a reason from it. But again, here's a real opportunity for young people to learn about difference and diversity and things they might not come across in other areas of their life. They're learning about people and difference, and that's ultimately going to really help them if they're exposed to people who experience all this different stuff, and they're hopefully going to be more understanding and accepting and inclusive themselves as they go forward in their lives, rather than a young person who's never seen any of that and then sees it and goes, oh, and
But Fleur, honestly, I could have sat down and listened to you all day. Thank you so much. I'm thinking, bloody hell, look at time. So I'm really sorry that it's gone over.
Oh, not at all. I really enjoyed it.
I could have listened to you all day.
We can always do it again.
So,
can't wait.
Thank you so much. It's been, honestly, it has been bloody immense. I've loved it. So thanks so much. It's everything you've said there is just so intuitive and so much there for people to take away and just learn from. So thank you.
I'm always happy to talk about this stuff. So we can always do it again.
Where can people find you then?
So I am on Instagram. I've got 2 separate accounts because I've sort of split off some of the sport specific stuff, because I think some people who are into sport, you know, they weren't as into the sport stuff. So that's driven differently. And then I'm also Dr Fleur-Michelle on Instagram as well. So that's the best place to find me, where I'm most active.
Excellent. Well, I'll link them in as well when we get this out and stuff. So I'll put them on. So Fleur, thanks so much. Just immense, absolutely bloody brilliant.
Thank you.
All the sort of questions we had down and stuff we didn't cover because it just went brilliant. So
we'll have a future chat.
Honestly, thanks so much. It was superb. I just love it. I can't wait to sort of let me missus listen to it as well, because she'll love that, and everyone else will that has or lives with ND. But I think also for me, this is aimed more at those that think they don't or don't understand what we've talked about. So just give them such a broad understanding of what it is, but also how they can support players. So again,
thanks for the opportunity, Danny.
Amazing, Fleur. Thank you so much.
All right.